I always do. Hey, lovely one. How are you?
I'll be good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm also good. I love having these
Okay.
conversations, and particularly loving that it's bringing people back that I haven't spoken to for ages. So
That's
it's really nice
true.
to have you
We
back.
haven't had a chat since 2020, I think, actually.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what happens. If moving country was one thing, but like then the whole world stopping when I moved countries is quite another, you know?
Yes.
Wasn't expecting that.
No, it's a bit of a shock.
Um, this idea of something being sacrosanct or reverend or cherished, had you heard of it before I started using this word?
I'll be honest with you, no. I did have to go and Google it. I was like, what the hell does that mean, right? But once I kind of understood the concept, I was like, oh, I get it. It's like something that is really valuable and divine almost to ourselves, holding that space, you know?
Yeah, I really, you know, as you can see by me having these conversations and calling it through, it feels like time for us to be doing that intentionally. And I think, you know, working with space holders and coaches and practitioners and kind of all of that, everyone thinks that they are, you know, it's like, yes, you know, but what I realized is that what the thing that I was making sacrosanct was my work, right? If I was really honest, what I got up every day and like worshipped at the altar of was my business and my clients. And knowing that, or really seeing that, enabled me to start making a shift. And so now, like getting to the beach every day and moving my body every day and really like hydrating, like those things have become sacrosanct to me, and my business and my clients come second. But there was a huge amount of alchemy, of reprogramming, of perceptive shift, of brutal honesty with myself that had to happen in order for me to get there. And I know that you've been on quite a ride with personal development and with running your business and writing and spirituality, like just the whole thing. And I wondered whether you've got any, or you've made any big kind of observations for yourself around what you truly hold as sacrosanct.
I think it's really important to make sure that you're not just talking the talk, because it's so easy in the world of social media. You can post an inspirational quote or a post and you're like, hey, look, I'm doing the work, right? But if you're not embodying that, if you're not living that truth, then it feels disingenuous. It feels detached, you know? And I think people, whether they're aware of it or not, they can sense that. And what I've come to see is, like you, I was putting way too much energy and time into my business, and I would justify that, right? Because as you know, I am single parent, it's just me and the kids here, and you know, businesswoman. So it'd be like, well, I have to show up and I have to keep busy because I'm dependent on it. And so I would always make an excuse. But I am fucking knackered, right? I'm exhausted. And what I realized was that I'm not showing up with the best of myself. I am not giving anybody the best of me, including me. And actually, self-care is not something that should be seen as luxury or at the bottom of the to-do list. And I'll get to it when I've sorted everybody else out. It's something that allows you to be fully whole, fully complete, fully showing up in the world with your energy and giving all of yourself, rather than feeling depleted and resentful and exhausted and in that horrible space. And then you're not helping anybody. So that's been a really big shift for me, is understanding that, but also trying to implement that. And also being kind to myself in that process, knowing that some days I get it and I can, and I, you know, and some days it's still something that I am striving and trying to bring more into, you know?
I do. And I feel like this concept of self-care is a really important part of women's work.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, we are taught how to nurture ourselves by our mothers. And if they are saying one thing and doing another, then we learn what they are doing, not what they are saying. And so it's so important for us to be modeling coming from a place of totality, of integrity, of wholeness, of fully self-nurtured. And yet, again, because we're so ruled by our conditioning and by society and by what we're seeing and how our mothers behaved, you know, to us, it is a big cycle to break.
Absolutely. I was talking to this with a client last week. I mean, I am feminist to the core. If you like, I'm like a stick of rock. If you cut me open, it would say feminist all the way through. But what I've come to see, and it's a kind of controversial thing to say, really, but I feel quite strongly about it. I think that kind of the thing that we have strived for, to have it all, to have total, you know, to have the family and the home, but also to have the career. I now question, can you actually have it all in a space where you are whole, happy, at peace, have good well-being? Or is it the case of actually multitasking where you're kind of doing everything half-assed and not showing up fully in that space? Because women still carry the burden of care, of housework, of running the home, of taking care of children, and they're still trying to have a full-time career as well. And I'm wondering whether the balance of power that we feel that we have is actually something of a story that we have created and telling ourselves, perpetuating it, but it's making us all overstressed, over miserable, and over frazzled.
I mean, to me, it's not, I hear you, and to me, it's not controversial because I find controversialism very weird, right? Like it exists in bubbles and echo chambers, and it's only like what's controversial in one space isn't in another, and maybe therefore it's controversial for me to say, you know what, I'm not a feminist anymore, I'm a retired feminist. I am a peopleist, I'm a humanist, and what I mean by that is I really want for us to all take better care and really understand the equity around both the divine masculine and the divine feminine, but looking at that potentially from a place of kind of logos and eros, right? Like looking at this fully realized and fully realized humans, and kind of going, okay, well, maybe it isn't as simple, maybe it's simplified to define it by gender, and maybe rather than, because I think so much of feminism comes from a place of pitting us against rather than being inclusive, and that's the piece that I feel like I really wish it would change. And I see so many people kind of standing on this, you know, I feel like it's massive, the work that's been done in the arena of sexism, and nowhere near enough. And then when we look at it in terms of us as a collective, as a whole, it's kind of ridiculous to be singling out this tiny little section and not making it intersectional, right? And like not looking at everyone who is disempowered, but because it also includes men who are completely disempowered by this simplification and fractioning of what it means to be a man that isn't even representative of men, right? It's not helping anyone the way that we're living our lives right now.
No, absolutely. And actually, it feels quite like it's become to some degrees a political issue, and it does feel like very black and white, like two sides, and we're trying to meet in the middle, but no one's really listening to each other, no one's really hearing each other. And you're right, I mean, that the patriarchy has totally disenfranchised and disempowered men, but that they don't, a lot of them, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of them do not realize that or do not want to see that, because it's easier to focus on us. So if we're going to find a place of, you know, actual real equality, we need to realize that ultimately we are all human beings first and foremost, and actually our basic needs and our dreams and our fears, they are the same. Yes, we have different aspects and different body parts, but ultimately we are all human. And we're going to co-create in this world and live together and try and find some peace and some harmony moving forward, we are going to have to work together at some point. rather than being these two separate tribes that kind of keep fighting in the middle.
Well, and it's not even that, right? Like the marketing on a grand scale is binary, and it's very much pitting against one another, and like you're either this or this. But that's not actually, like, you can't look at the patriarchy without looking at capitalism. And people try and do it all of the time, right?
Yes.
And it's like, actually, while you have a model where 1% of the population is actually, you know, has more wealth than the whole of the rest of the world, we're not, like, all of it is a control scheme. All of it is a mechanism to keep these people fighting against each other, so that 1%, and also, you know, dangling this carrot of the American dream, or, you know, freedom or independence. And if I think back, you know, it is a political issue. If you think back to when we were growing up, the whole idea was you must be independent, you must be free, and the kind of emancipation of women and the women's empowerment movement coming from this place of, essentially, without really writing it, you can be men too, rather than you can have a voice. Like, there's, I don't know, I just feel like the marketing on what we actually are asking for is all wrong, and we've got this kind of, what people think they want versus what they actually want is becoming so far apart. And that's the piece where I feel like we can do the most service, really.
Absolutely, but that's helping people to even understand what they want, truly, because I don't think people do. I think there's so many issues still in the world, of course, and we get fed all these stories and these cloaks going, look at this, focus on this, and that takes our energy and our attention. And so when you ask these bigger questions, people do feel a bit lost and feel a bit directionless. So actually the first step is to go, okay, in your life, what would make you happier? You know, what does real peace and happiness and abundance look like to you? I don't think we even stop and ask ourselves those questions. We just keep chasing these things that we have been told are more important, right? Like buying the house and going on holiday. And I'm not saying those things are not important, but I do think to some degree it is almost like a distraction technique. Because if we actually stopped and asked those deeper questions of ourselves, all of us, I think it would shift an awful lot in society as a whole anyway. I think the whole thing of capitalism and materialism and consumerism is built, like you said, on this huge structure that is keeping us, like, you know, that kind of Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall-esque energy. But actually it's not helpful for us in our humanity, and stopping and breaking that down and having those deep questions with yourself and going into those spaces is where our empowerment really comes from.
I agree. And I think if people slowed down enough to recognize that they don't want to be chasing constantly, and that they could, you know, it's this piece on survival, right? No one ever gets to what it is that they want because they need to make sure that they can keep a roof over their head and they can keep food in the fridge. And that's it's horrific that the world has now got to a place where, even though there's plenty for everyone, it's structured in such a way that the majority of people can never find the space or the nervous system reset to know what it is that they truly, who they even are, what they what they think or feel about anything, because they're living in a perpetual state of scarcity.
Of course. And that's kind of then perpetuated by, like, the media and the politicians, because they are very aware of that and then capitalize on that for their own profit. It's messed up.
It is. And so, you know, knowing all of that, what is, so what do you truly hold reverend and sacred and sacrosanct in your life?
I mean, it shifts and changes. At this current time, my thing is I feel very called to work with women specifically. Now, that in itself has led to some conversations, because people say, what about men? And my thing is, well, there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. I can't save everybody. This is my calling. This is my purpose, right? There are other people that can help and save men. Right now, I need to be in this space. So right now, my energy is very focused on helping women to see their own divinity, light, power, awesomeness, beauty. Just, I wish women in particular could really see themselves the way I see them. Because I literally walk through the world and all I see is goddesses and queens. And yet what they see when they look in the mirror is what they don't like about themselves, and how that real lack.
I hear you, and I'm going to reflect something back. So you said at the beginning that your business was no longer sacred. It wasn't the biggest thing in your life anymore. So I've asked you twice, what is sacrosanct in your life? And you've told me what you're doing for work and in the world. I want to know about you in your life, in your day-to-day life. What is the most important thing? What are you making time and space for?
2 things.
Yeah.
One, my children. Yeah. Absolutely. My children above, I mean, I've got 3, and I know I'm biased, I'm their mother, but my children are just, I feel very, very blessed that they've chosen me to be their mother. Mm. And 2 is, at the moment, my creativity is, I just feel so deeply connected to my own creative space. I feel like it's blossoming because I'm allowing. For the longest time I contained. I kept it small. I wouldn't even allow myself to go into that space. And the more that I've allowed and flowed, and just seeing where it wants to take me, it is like this lotus that just keeps getting bigger and blooming into a beautiful space. It's gorgeous.
Oh, I love that. So what does that look like on a practical, like on a day-to-day? Like, what does allowing space for creativity look like?
If sometimes like I feel like the muse sits with me, and she whispers to me, and so some days I'm like, I need to do this, this, and this, and she's like, okay, you need to do this. You don't really need to do this today. What you need to do is to find space to connect and flow through your writing, or through your painting, or through your dance. You need to make space for that in your life. That is what you need. And so by trusting that those whispers and those calls and flowing with it, actually what happens is it's made me happier. It's made me, I would say, like myself more, because I was on a huge self-love journey for a long, long time, as you know. But I feel more embodied and connected to my soul just by allowing that energy and that space in my life. It's taken me deeper in some ways, and I didn't expect that. I always felt like my spirituality would be the thing. And I actually saw creativity as separate for a while, which is, saying that now sounds ridiculous, but I did. I was like, spirituality's here and creativity is over here. Right. But actually, right? And by understanding my creativity, it has taken me deeper into myself.
How did you understand your creativity? Or like, how did you always think of yourself as a creative person?
No. We are fed stories and limiting beliefs from other people as we go along our journey. We pick up what people say, right, as we go along, and it goes into our minds and our hearts and becomes our truth. And 100 people, as you know, can tell you that you're marvelous and you're wonderful, but one person tells you you're rubbish, and that's what you hold on to, right? That's the limiting belief. So throughout my journey, especially in education, I was given quite negative messages around my creativity. And so I believed that stuff. And so I, for the longest time, told myself that I wasn't good enough. Even if I allowed myself, it would be rubbish. I really believed that. And yet there was this like fire in my soul that would never really go away. And actually, the more I tried to ignore it, the louder it got. It's always fun when that happens. But it wasn't really until 2013 that I started listening. So, and I mean, at that point, you know, I was an older person. And so I spent all those years just hiding from my true self, which is quite sad, but also clearly part of my journey. I wish I had embraced it sooner. I think it would have made me a lot happier. But hey, first of all, it was through my writing, because I wanted to write books since I can remember. I love literature, like you wouldn't know. But the big shift for me actually was in lockdown in 2020. when actually I allowed myself to paint for the first time in my life. Because I really thought I wasn't good enough. And I thought people are going to laugh at me, what people are going to think. I was all of that space, right? Then I thought, well, I'm in lockdown. It's just me and the kids. It doesn't matter. If I'm ever going to do this, this is the time. So I thought, and if it's rubbish, I can just put it in the bin. Like, no one's got to see it. I have to post it online. So I got the canvas and I got the paint, and I just got the joy and the freedom. And actually, I'm not Picasso or anything, but I was better than I thought I was. Simply by letting myself be free on the canvas. It was joyful. And what I realized was, it's not about sales. It's not about, well, I'm doing this for business. I'm doing this to sell something. I did it simply because I enjoy it and I love it, and it's just part of me. And that in itself is very freeing to even hold that space.
It is. And for me, it's one of those pieces, like the idea that creativity and spirituality would be separate is, I'm like, where does that come from? Because creation comes from our pelvic brain, right? And that is where we are connected to God, and God being, you know, the divine and the creator, you know, whatever that is, because that's where magic happens, where creation happens, right? And so to me, again, we're back into this place of like, the true essence and sanctity of life has been so politicized and taken from us, that we have so little understanding that it's not about what it looks like and whether we can sell it. Like the commodification of absolutely fucking everything is stealing joy from the simplest thing of just looking at a color and being awakened by it. Like that gets to be more than enough. And so the work that you're doing in the world, the work that all of us are doing in the world, and again, like I wish there was a better word for it that wasn't work, because that implies that we need to get paid for it, that there's effort involved, that we don't really want to do it, versus like this engaged undertaking or whatever it is, you know, something that comes from a place of like, I am moving through this, I'm inquiring with it, I'm enjoying being in it. Like, I just wish more and more people had that.
Oh, for sure, for sure. To see their passions and their purpose and their callings in that way. Because you're right, that word work is so like, it's heavy, and it's like you've like dumped a concrete block on the table, right? It comes with all these stories and these beliefs around this thing. But it totally disconnects us from actually what is important, because we say, well, it's not worth doing unless you're doing it to make money. And straight away, that is so disenfranchising. It's so disempowering. It's so judgmental of a space. You know, when I did move from what my some people would call a proper job of being a high school teacher, and I had my awakening and I started to do readings and helping people, there were people that really just couldn't get their head around it. Because it felt like, well, that's not a proper job. That's just something that you're playing at. That's just something that you're doing as a side hustle. It's not real. And again, this has been my work that I've had to do. Like, I really listened to that, and I didn't realize I was listening to that, but I didn't allow myself to fully embrace my purpose and my passion, because I was holding that energy that this was not proper work. This was not something that was worthwhile. This was not something that was worthy, or was really like I could own it and claim it. It was almost like said with embarrassment, like I do readings. It was kind of like, it was embarrassing because I felt like somehow I was doing something wrong. And stepping into the space of saying, no, this is what matters to me. I like helping people. I like bringing joy. I like healing people. Like this is important. And once I owned that space, what happens then is that other people's opinions become very, very less important. What matters is what do you think about what you do?
Yeah. You said earlier, and I want to I want to hone in on it a little bit. And I'm like, I'm also aware of time, and I want to save some of it for the sacrosanct section, but we'll see where we go. We'll do another minute on this. You said earlier, I don't want to save them, right? There was this piece around, and I'm really curious around the language. And so when you're working with people, like healing them or empowering people, right? Again, this is a piece of language in the industry that I would really love to change, because we're not empowering people. We are reminding them of their power. They're empowered in the first place. They've got power. And we're not saving people, because we're not a hero that rushes in to do it. And that puts a lot of pressure on us, and also takes away their power in that moment by saying, oh, I am your savior and you are a victim, right, in this. And so I'd love to see if we can reframe like what it is that you're like, how we speak around this language in this space. Does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. It's funny, like I literally just had a huge aha moment, so thank you, because I hadn't even thought of it that way. But you're spot on. I actually, by calling myself, I'm having a literal existential crisis right now. I hope you appreciate this. And by calling myself,
what I'm here for.
By calling myself a women's empowerment coach, I'm actually, in a way, disempowering them by saying that they don't have their own power in the first place. I hadn't even thought about that, which is interesting, because maybe a better term then would be a reigniter or something like that, because everything, I always say to people, everything you need is already in there, right? All we have to do is connect you to it, right? And so you remember, it's not learning something new, it's remembering who you are in the first place.
And so much of the role of whatever it is that we call ourselves, and we all have very, different and unique roles, and yet we're all trying to live in this hierarchical, capitalist, patriarchal system, which needs us to have a title, and therefore there to be 10 of us that are all the same, right? And the truth is that we are all completely unique, and the work that we do is ever so slightly different, and we can't just go, oh, I'll have a doctor, we're not that. There is something very different, and so it is a much more personalized approach. But this role is to be a way shower, and that way is or like a mirror holder, right? More than anything else is to do two things: is to go, I'm slightly further down this path, or I have slightly more experience, and I'm not going to judge you, and I'm not going to say side hustle what, or all of that. It's like, I'm going to believe that this alternate way of being that it's somewhere deep in your bones is real, and you're not crazy for wanting something different. And two, let me hold a mirror up so that you start and show you what I see, that piece that you were saying earlier, so that people can start to see themselves as that beauty, as that creation, that creatrix, or whatever it is. And that's, I feel like the language that we use is so important. And I just wrote down, actually, and I often am like, what's this episode about, as we go through? But it's something around like not even realizing what we're listening to, not even realizing, because it's so much of this work is those kind of aha moments of like, oh wow, did I say that? Oh wow, do I think that? Oh, where did that come from? Is that mine? And those kind of, that kind of not realizing the water that we're swimming in. It's very much like, it's an expression or a story of a frog in water that doesn't realize it's being boiled alive because it's been in there the whole time. I feel like that's where we are at with what it means to be a woman these days.
Absolutely. And it's really important to take accountability and to hold your hands up. Like what you just said about me as a women's empowerment coach, I could have been very defensive on that because it triggered me, right? I could have gone, no, I kind of reacted quite badly to that. But actually, it's better for you to say, actually, maybe I have got it wrong. And that's okay, because we are all works in progress. And by taking accountability and holding your hands up and say, I didn't even think of it like that, or I didn't realize that, or, you know, maybe there would be a better way, is actually where you get your growth and your healing from. That's how you keep stepping up. It's by saying, I don't have all the answers. I'm not perfect, and that's okay.
Yes, yes, and thank you for modeling that. You know, I think it's we still live in a society where the idea is that we're, again, like we said, pitted against each other, and that it's a competition, and that we're going, well, seeing as I pointed this out, then I must be better. And that's not, you know me, that's not where I'm coming from, right, at all. And when I share what I see, it is, I have been labeled as brutally honest so many times, and not everyone likes that. And
no.
But like you said, also, you know, we can feel the essence and the intention behind it so often. And when we're, and I know that for you, this is a lifelong journey in Christ, and that people that come and work with you will get to really be loved on and seen, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. My clients say I am the one that makes them cry. I used to really almost feel bad and apologize. Now I go, no, it's good, because what I do is I get to the root. I get right down. So they'll go, I'm here because X, Y, and Z. And I go, So we talk about that for a while, and then I go, okay, what's really going on here? And we go right down, and I actually get the paper to pull it up. And of course, then, like you say, people don't realize the undercurrent of life, or what they're actually facing or dealing or healing, because it's better to swim on the shore. It's better to paddle in the shallows, because that feels safer. You do a deep dive, that's terrifying, because you have to look at your shadow face on, and most people don't want to. It's scary.
I know, but it's where all the beauty is.
Yes, and the power and the magic, that's where it is, down there, right?
Yeah. Oh, this has been so much fun. I feel like we could chat and chat and chat and chat, but you've given me a beautiful idea of what I'm going to talk with you about in Sacrosanct Secrets. So in a second, we're going to move over, but for those who are finishing listening at this point, just thank you. And I'm going to pop your links in, and links to your books, and all of the kind of creative stuff, and your, whatever you've sent me, I'm going to pop in so people can go and find that. And if you've enjoyed listening to Katie and I chat, then please do go and give her a follow, and say where you heard her or where you're coming from. Is there anything else, one last thing you want to share with people about what is important?
I think it's the term I hear that really kind of triggers me a little bit is when people go guilty pleasure. No, you shouldn't feel guilty about your pleasure. Right, unless it's something that is maybe criminal, and maybe, you know, you need to actually go and get some help. But if you have a pleasure that lights you up and is joyful, don't feel guilty about your joy ever, because it's yours, and you're meant to step into that space. So own it, make it yours.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, darling. Mwah.